Are we on? We are ready to call to meeting the 2025 budget hearings. This is the first reading, and if you would, please bow your heads, and we will pray, and then we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you to seek your guidance and wisdom as we make decisions that will impact our community. We pray for your presence to be with us during this meeting, and we ask that you guide our thoughts, words, and actions. We pray for the leaders of our community, that you would grant them wisdom, discernment, and integrity as they lead. Help us to make these decisions that will honor you and benefit all of those that we serve. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I do have one announcement before we start. John Eddie Myers, our sixth council person, I'm sure everyone is already aware of it or seen it in the paper, has resigned from council for the remainder of his term. He accepted a full-time position that will not allow him to participate in these meetings. From what I understand, there's going to be a caucus on the 19th of September that will bring in the sixth council member. So I just wanted to publicly announce that, and hopefully John will make a trip back at some point, and we can thank him for his service and tell him what a wonderful job he did. So, thank you. Okay, moving on to the agenda. I also want to announce that Mike Reuter, our financial consultant, will be here this morning around 10:30 a.m. to update us on our fiscal plan. So hopefully it'll be earlier, but he's scheduled to be here at 9:30. So the first one, it looks like that we have on the agenda is County Park, and that can be located on page 1 in your budget book. There's really no rhyme, no reason, but state your name and your position for the record, and then probably I'm going to ask if there's been any changes to the original budget you submitted, and if you have any additional information for us prior to us taking a vote. And of course, we will be open for the council to ask questions as well.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Kevin Leonard, Park Superintendent. And no, everything as presented. 1157 was as presented and discussed at the budget workshop.
Okay.
Then our 1178 was as presented, just had a few changes from last year of just with having the new office coming in, we increased.
So other than the one new employee that you
Yeah,
have
on
requested,
1157, yeah.
everything else, it appears, is within the guidelines
Yes.
that we suggested,
Yeah,
correct?
just the one new position for maintenance for 1157, yeah.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Kevin? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the first motion to approve funds 1157-0128 and Fund 1178.
There's one more.
And the Fund 1179 Park Non-Reverting Operating. Yep, there's 3.
Second.
I have a first by Melinda, a second by Mr. Dittmers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Soil and water, page 3. Hi.
Hi, Kathy Hayes, Director, Johnson County Soil and Water. I have no changes from what was submitted.
And everything is within the guidelines, correct?
Yep.
Okay,
Move
thank you,
to
Kathy.
approve. I'll move to approve Fund 1001-0130 Soil and Water Conservation.
Have a first by Mr. Dittmers,
Second.
second by Mr. Deere. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You as well. Extension office?
My name is Heather Doherty. I'm the 4-H Extension Educator and County Extension Director. And I don't have any changes from what was submitted.
And everything is within the guidelines, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions for Heather?
No, I move to approve. 1001-0116, cooperative extension service.
The first by Mr. Dittmers,
Second.
second by Mr. Mallers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
And we have our Health Department.
Betsy Swearingen, Director, Health Department. Nothing, well, yes, there is one change. We took some money.
I'm sorry, Betsy,
On the 1161 budget, one change, we took some money out of one line item to put into communications and travel and training.
Okay, I've seen that you submitted a revised budget, so that is.
That is the only thing.
That's the only
is
thing
we
that.
just took it out of the funding for other local health departments and put 10,000 in a communication line and 40,000 in a travel and training line.
Where does that show up?
It's on page, I think that's about page 4.
It was 11,
It starts on page 3, page 1 of 2 on the revised 1161 local public health services. About halfway down, you can tell it's in red. There's 40,000. And then in page 2, it's from the top, you'll see where we took the
our
50,000.
revised, page 7, I believe.
Which
Bear with me here a
which
second.
line is it, Betsy, again?
All right, so out of, in the 1161 budget,
Right.
we took 50,000 out of the other county public health aid, and we put 10,000 of that into a communication line and 40,000 into a travel and training line. in that
Do you not
budget.
have the, is it account number 31500 for your travel and training?
Yes.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay,
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for.
okay.
And all the others are as submitted and within the guidelines.
Okay, thank you, Betsy. Any additional questions? Prepared for a motion?
Motion to approve.
A motion, first by Mr. Myers, and second,
I'll make a second motion.
Which funds are we approving?
1159 Health Department.
Yeah, I'll put that in my motion, I'm sorry. 1159, 1161, 1168, and 1206.
Correct, thank you. And as the first by John Melinda, you're still second that?
I'm a second on that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And we have our coroner. By the way, congratulations, I've been seeing all the articles on your cold case.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Put in a lot of work on that.
Yeah, I could see that. We all could see that. A lot of good work coming from our community corrections, our coroner's office, our sheriff. It's just, it's a good day to be in Johnson County.
It is, I agree
Yeah.
with you. Michael Pruitt, Johnson County Coroner. The only changes that I have, and these are things I caught after the workshop, was I did not apply my 5% to the different, the shift differential pay, which is the 16900, the additional opt-outs and additional personnel pay, the 16800, and the deputy coroner fund, which was the 11324.
Why would shift differential need 5%?
That's how we, so because of how we pay the deputies, I just basically, every year I increase those categories by whatever you allow, since they don't get a set salary. I just increase those line items by whatever percentage you allow.
Which keeps it on a matrix
Yes.
of being even,
Yes.
correct?
So it'd increase my budget a little over $4,000 from what I previously brought before you during the workshop. But we held all of our other categories pretty much where we were last year.
Which were the ones that changed again?
So, yeah, so we'll start 11,324, which is the deputy coroner fund, is 16,800, which is the autopsy additional personnel fund, and the shift differential fund, which is 16,900.
16 what?
900.
900, I've got
Yeah.
you.
And they all just increase 5%?
Yes,
Okay.
Did you resubmit that to the auditor's
I
office?
did not.
Okay. You got that, Amy?
I would probably add that in the motion, if you're gonna adopt what he's proposing,
Uh-huh.
just make note of the 6,900 and 11,324 being increased by 5%.
Okay, we'll do that.
I'll give you the numbers.
Yeah, there's, you have the dollars.
Hang on just a second. Amy will give us the actual
Yeah, I
numbers.
caught it. It was one of those things I haven't caught with the new building opening up and everything that going on. I was like, I started looking at it again, it's like something's not adding up, and then I was like, I found it, I know what it is, so.
So account 11,324
Yep,
is gonna be 22,751. Account 16,800 is gonna be 3,370.
No, wait a minute. 16800, is that what you said?
yes,
Yes.
that's be correct.
Okay.
It's gonna be what?
3,370. And 16900 is 49,209.
49,209? Okay.
Yeah, what's that take the total to? Amy,
One moment.
I saw that look.
You said you
don't have a
calculated
calculator up here.
about a $4,000 increase.
Yeah, it went from like 301 to 305.
Okay,
My calculations aren't always as good as Amy's, but
yeah.
That's why I asked her.
yeah, I understand completely. I'm always afraid to ask her because I find out just how wrong I am sometimes.
$305,192.
So you were, yep, it's pretty close. Any other questions?
I'd move to approve Coroner's Fund 1157, 107 with the amended change at a total of 305,192. And do we need those specified?
Yeah, will you do the line items, please?
With the change at account number 11,324 from 21,668 to 22,751. Account 16,800 from 3210 to 3370. Account number 16,900 from 46,866 to 49,209. For a total budget at 305,192.
Mr. Ditmers made a motion, Mr. Myers seconded the motion. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Surveyor?
Good morning. For the record, Greg Cantwell, Johnson County Surveyor. I've got 5 before you this morning. As I get started, I wanted to take a second to thank the council, the auditor's office, treasurer's office, and the fairground staff. As you know, June 22nd, we had our phase 3 of our 5-phase watershed update, and we had our reassessment hearings. On that date, we had 49 watersheds. We started at 7 a.m., got done about 4:30. We were successful in having 48 of those watersheds, the assessments approved. One of them was continued, and later that watershed was vacated. It was very successful, and something that started pre-COVID, finally got it done.
Thank you for not inviting me to that meeting. Nothing else, nothing has changed within your budget since?
No, I've had a couple of decreases just because our big hurdle was done. with the watershed updates. I did have, I know on our equipment and our training funds, I'm returning some from this year. We just ran out of time. We didn't have time to complete the training we wanted to, or update the equipment that we wanted to.
But
So-
the information you submitted originally is status quo, correct? Okay. Any questions for Mr. Cantwell? Someone like to make a motion on,
Move to approve, surveyor budgets, 1157, 106, 1217, 106, 4905, and 1202, and then 1157, 119, the drainage board.
correct.
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
Mr. Mallard made a motion and Ms. Grismer seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Passes, thank you. Have our clerk.
Good morning, Trina McLaughlin, Johnson County Clerk.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Trina.
Hello. So I didn't make any changes, just the one from the budget workshop. Other than that. I
Are you
hadn't-
talking about the new legislation for your,
I am not talking about that.
Okay.
Just the clerk's perpetuation fund where I was moving employees around.
right,
that
right.
was the
And that's the
only
one
thing.
that reflects the 7, I believe, but
Yes.
it's 5% onto her salary. I know that you have contacted me on the new legislation and the stipend and things, and legal is currently going through that. You've provided information.
Okay.
And we still have some questions answered, so it'll probably be at our next meeting that we can discuss that maybe
Okay,
in detail.
okay.
Yes, I mean tentatively, the statute, I don't think required us to amend the salary ordinance.
I didn't.
For that stipend, so I think it would really just be, either additional appropriation or just move it like before.
Yeah. So if you would, Trina, would you see that it gets on the, make an official request for the agenda for our, whatever the next meeting is available, and I'll make sure everyone else has all the information, and we'll discuss it and go from there?
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. So other than the one change that we talked about in workshop, which you explained why it reflects 7%, it's because
Yes.
you moved the positions.
Correct.
So does anyone have any questions for Trina? Okay, Trina, it looks like you have 4 that we're looking at. So I'm prepared for a motion.
Motion to approve funds 1001, 0101, that's binary. 1217, 0101, Fund 1119, Fund 1001, 0114. As submitted.
Second.
So Mr. Myers made a motion, Mr. Mallers has a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all you do. I gotta put everybody's name in front of me.
Come on up, Michelle.
Well, it's 8:30 right after a holiday, so
Right, right.
I'm extending
Hi,
grace.
Michelle.
That's right.
Hello, Mrs. Treasurer.
Good morning.
How are you?
Shell Ann Graves, Johnson County Treasurer, and I have no changes to the budget that we discussed at the budget workshop.
And everything's within the guidelines, right, Michelle?
No, there were some items that were out of the guidelines. They were discussed at the hearing.
Okay, and there were no
Workshop.
changes, correct? Let me find my notes. Okay, from my notes, Michelle, just to refresh everyone's memory, and you can tell me if we've missed something here, okay? The question was asked about the overtime and the part-time pay.
No, I don't think we discussed overtime or part-time.
We didn't?
No.
Okay, all right. Equipment repair and maintenance went up by 400%, we discussed that. I know, I had a question here, overtime and part-time had 90% of the funds were left in there, so I think I was gonna ask. I don't know why we didn't talk about it, so I'm assuming it's okay.
So is there a question or we're good?
No,
Okay.
since you said, I just want to make sure everything's within the guidelines. Most of them that are outside the
Yes.
guidelines, I was asking people to say, as presented before, and item so-and-so is still outside the guidelines, so we'll have to look at it to make sure that everything is, see what's out.
Michelle, can you remind us which ones are out? Looks like I don't see anything that's out of.
31,200 is postage.
And that we did discuss.
Oh, no, that's printing, I'm sorry, that's printing.
Yes.
We had to buy more checks for the payroll account that we
Correct.
had never used checks for before. And then 32,200 is postage.
Yep.
Cost of doing business.
And then 36,000 is the new remote deposit capture machine, and that is an annual support plan.
Right.
Thank you. Yep.
So we did discuss those. Okay. Any other questions?
No, I'd move to approve treasurer's 1157, 0103, 1217-0103 in, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it, this was two.
And my notes do say great job on here, Michelle.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dittmers has a
Second.
motion. Mr. Deere has seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes as presented. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, does that include the 1217?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we
thank
took both
you.
of them.
Thank you.
Enhanced.
Yeah, I have one question for Amy.
Hi, Tracy.
Okay.
How many
Sorry.
of these do you have? Is that enhanced access?
Enhanced access,
Right.
11, and then identification, 11, I have 1154, 1160, 1217.
And 1189.
And 1189.
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Teresa Petro, Johnson County Recorder. On the 1154, there, I brought it up at the workshop. Under the 24 adopted budget, the 1154, 32,000. The
That's the
budget was
Laredo.
36, so it's only a 4%
Yeah.
increase, not 54.
Yeah, that's Laredo, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yep, so that takes the 1154, should be just a 4% increase, I
Yep.
believe.
And we got notes where we talked about that from last time.
Yeah, and then I did increase the elected officials, but nothing other than what we discussed at the workshop.
Okay, so you didn't resubmit a new budget taking everything to 5%, correct?
I did not.
Okay.
Well, because my total 1189 is negative 9%, but that's with, of course, our discussion on the salaries, so I don't know.
No, I
what's
just
gonna
wanted to
get-
make sure that I
Sure.
wasn't overlooking a resubmitted budget to stay
Yep.
within the guidelines.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, any discussion on the higher percentages that are above the guidelines? Any additional discussion?
Well, I believe we need to stay within the guidelines.
I agree.
those two positions.
So the motion would need to state, I believe, approve as presented with exception of all pay increases be limited to the 5%. So I would.
May I continue discussion?
Certainly.
Go ahead.
Teresa, can you be specific on what you're increasing and why?
Because I've been trying for 2 years to get my positions, the new job descriptions in. I've done what I was asked to do, and it's been changed by council, which I understand it's a tough job, and I understand what direction you're going, but I'm just trying to get mine. My office will still be lower paid than any of the similar offices. I was just trying to bring them a little bit closer with a 6, this would be a 6%.
So
The
is overall,
submitted 6.5, well, I've got it, and I'm cutting a position,
but overall, your level,
negative 9%
negative 9%.
would be my salary, the 1189 salary would be because of cutting the position.
And most of these changes are coming from the perpetuation fee fund,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, that's the only, yeah. Travel and training, but that's because our training's gonna increase, cost is increased, so. But yes, 11, the perpetuation independent account, that I sign a sworn statement in a ordinance, which I haven't done yet, to agree to pay those. It's
So
not out of general, but it's still a negative 9%.
May I have a
Total.
few minutes?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I know you went over all of this
Sure.
during the workshops. So absolutely, go right ahead.
So I know we're trying to hold the line on a 5% limit, but I think that we need to be very careful about how we control other people's offices. And I think Teresa's made multiple attempts at this. And I believe that we need to place more importance on what an elected official is asked to do and asking us to do. They have employees that they have that serve at their pleasure, correct? I believe that's how the legislation states. So I believe that Teresa should have that ability to change things within her budget. And if she is increasing her budget, I wholly support what she's doing. I would not make a motion to not approve this budget. In fact, I would make the motion to approve it.
So instead of conversation, you've made a motion?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Well, under that logic, we can cut lines and just say our total is under, at 5% or under, or at a negative 9, and then we have, we defeat the purpose of what we're driving at on our personnel costs. Between that and comparing departments, which I don't think is a good practice, I kind of find it hard to agree with
So,
where you're
well,
headed, John.
and that's where we have a parting of the ways, is because I don't believe we as a council, a 7-member body, should be looking into each department and making decisions on an individual basis. I think that should be within the realm, and it is within the realm of the elected official. We're elected officials, and we're responsible for looking into those when they're way out of line, and in this regard, I don't think it is.
I don't disagree with your, I mean, I understand your comments, but I think that's kind of an audible that we haven't really made available to anybody else, that we're, all of a sudden, this is something over here, and I understand the 2 years of frustrations that you've had, you know, with the policies and the job descriptions and all that stuff. If we'd ever get an HR person in here, maybe that wouldn't be a problem that we'd have anymore, but unfortunately, that's not an issue, not something that we have.
I do have something to add. We have in the past, and as recently as 2022, allowed the department to give a 5% increase and distribute it differently. All of the elected officials here, I think, will tell you in the past, we have said, oh, you can give a 4% increase in salary or in any other line item. In 2022, a position, I know for a fact, a position was cut from a department and the other positions were given more of an increase than the overall that were given. This is not, it's not a big, 6% instead of 5%, but total, being 9% decrease with the cut of a position. I'm being very diligent about, we don't need, it is, when you have a small department, it is hard to manage vacations and time off. So that's a luxury that we won't have. We give up some things to get some things. And I believe that the elected officials
So if we
should
make
be
this
allowed to do
change,
that.
Teresa, if we make this, and the motion is made to deny this, and you come back, is there a chance that your budget would increase?
For 20, you mean for future years?
No, for this budget.
No. No. I've allowed for increases in the other the other funds. I'm not sure, you mean in the 1189?
Well, what I'm
overall?
asking is overall, you're negative 9% right now.
No, because I'm not filling a 5th deputy recorder position this year. I don't see forecasting that we're going to pick up that much business. 2020 through 23 were phenomenal real estate years.
So if we ask to move it back to 5%, then what will that do?
To move my budget as a whole to 5%.
No, just the positions.
I don't think she understands the
I'm not
answer he
sure.
wants.
I don't want an answer.
Okay. You don't, okay,
I don't want a specific answer. I would like Teresa to answer.
so is there a chance that I would come back and ask for more than if you approved what was on the budget now? No, I won't come back and ask for more.
Thank you, Teresa.
Teresa, I agree with everything that you have said, and I understand your frustration. And you are correct on the percentages over the years being given and being distributed. Unfortunately, because I think it plays a big part of that, we have a lot of unequalness that we have had in the past. I'm not necessarily speaking of your office, but, unfortunately, giving this person 8 and this person 2 because you're trying to force them to quit or
Sure.
something, and I've seen that. That's been done to me.
Yeah, constructive discharge.
Right.
yes.
And so it was the goal of this council last year and this year, and hopefully next year, to try to not eliminate the elected officials from the decision, because you guys are exactly right. You know what your people need and who deserves what. But to bring some of those more consistent, and then start with the practice. Okay, here's your X amount of percent, following whatever matrix you've provided to make that fair and equitable to everyone. Since we do not do employee reviews here, it is just that, how much I want to give this one. And of course, as an elected official, you're gonna know that. So I agree and understand with everything that you're saying, but I do hope, I won't support going over the 5, but I do hope you understand where this council's, where I'm coming from. I want you to understand that. Because you're an excellent recorder, and you do an amazing job, and so does your staff, and I've been in your shoes. So, but for this year, I'm going to stick with the guidelines that were presented. For me,
So
I'm just one.
there's enough funds in general fund to fund this department?
If that's, if that is your, if that is your threat, we'll take that under
It's not a
advisement.
threat. I just want you to understand it's an independent account. And I'm only asking we will still be the lowest paid.
And I'm going back to the fact that tax dollars are tax dollars.
They are tax dollars.
Whether you
are
collect them
exactly
from the
right.
taxpayer or from property records, or from property taxes, or from federal or for state. You know, whether the auditor collects them to record a deed, or I'm sorry, to transfer a deed, you collect them to record
Yes.
it. Michelle does, whoever does what.
But
So,
I'm just saying that these funds can be used to fund that type of thing.
and we
It's
all
outside the realm of-
completely understand that. We do understand it. Or I understand it. So do we have any other questions for Teresa pertaining to her budget and her percentages that she's requested? If not, Teresa, you have anything else for us, hon?
No.
If not, the floor's open for a motion.
Make a motion to approve as submitted.
I'll need a second for that, please. It appears the motion would die for lack of a second. Prepared for an additional motion?
I move to accept the budgets, let's see here, where is it? 1154 enhanced access, 1160 identification security, 1217-104 elected officials training recorder, and then 1189 recorder's perpetuation, subject to reducing the increase to 5% for 11100, 11201, 13401, 13402, 13403, and 13404.
We have a motion on the floor by Mr. Mallers.
So, I'm sorry, so what are you reducing them?
Down to 5% increase.
For the guidelines.
Maybe you did on second.
We have a second by Mr. Dittmers. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 5-1.
I do have one question. So my fifth position, if I fill it, I can still fill that. I have a fifth position that I wasn't filling.
Was it eliminated in this budget?
It was because of the increase, it was a bargaining tool.
Yeah, but if it was eliminated, it was just passed that it was eliminated. So you'll have to come, I would suggest you come back at second reading for a change of the budget that was approved.
So
Next.
I have another question before we go on. Are we supposed to be saying this as approved in the first reading, or did that happen in the second reading?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Okay, county assessor. And it looks like, Mike, you have 3.
Yes, Mike Watkins, County Assessor. No changes to the budget per what we discussed at the workshop, other than we've got 4 employees in 2 different budgets. Currently, whichever one they end up in, the other budget will be reduced by that exact amount. Does that make sense?
Yes, but we reduced that from the you reduced that amount, correct? From the original?
There's been no changes to the numbers at all since the workshop. If employee A gets moved from reassessment into general fund, the amount that is currently requested in reassessment will become 0. I'm not asking for new employees, I'm just asking to move them into general fund.
And that was
so
in
that we don't
reference
drain
to
out
Mike
reassessment.
reflecting the budget, correct?
That was part of it, yes.
Yeah, okay. My only question was, do we really need to move all 4 of them at one time into the general fund?
Eventually, I would like to move all 8 employees.
Right.
I understand completely, that's why I didn't ask for all 8
Right.
this year.
So it is less than what's going to be moved eventually, correct?
Over the course of the next number of years, we'll be discussing this every year until all 8 are in general
Okay.
fund, yes.
Okay, that's the point I was trying to make, is
Yeah.
there's more to come, and we're doing this in a slow process in order to not
Right.
just throw all 8 people at one time into the general.
Right, smaller bites are a lot easier to swallow than the whole steak at
Right,
once.
good analogy, good analogy. Everything else is within the guidelines.
Absolutely, 100%. In fact, my budget, if you take out the technically 4 extra positions that are covered in both right now, is less than it was last year.
That's a good campaign speech.
I'm not up this year, but I'll save that.
Any questions for Mr. Watkins? If not, care to take a motion?
Move to approve 10-1001, 0109, 1131, and 1224 as presented.
Second.
Hold on. So you're approving all 4 positions in 2 budgets. Which one do you want to keep them in? They're advertised in both.
Okay.
Pick. You can't have them in both.
All right, so what does the motion need to be?
Well, you need to decide, are you moving all 4 positions from reassessment to general? Are you just moving 2 this year, all 4?
Oh, okay.
That was the discussion I think that I was trying to talk with Mike about. I think we decided at the workshop that based on what Mike Reuter had said, eventually they all would need to be moved. But he had asked for 4 this year to be moved into the general, which leaves the remainder of possibly 4 in the future. So I think we discussed at that time doing 2 and 2, and then looking at it again next year for the remainder.
Right.
I'm not sure what
Two
this-
now.
Yeah, 2 now, and
Yeah.
then,
So you need to make those changes now.
Okay. Two to the general fund from,
Which line items? Do you have a preference, Mike?
I do, yes. I would prefer that in general fund 1101-18204 for 77033 stay in general fund, and also 1101-11381 for 66678 also stay in general fund. The other 2, and I can say those numbers out loud if you need them, would be the easiest for me to handle being
is
still in
it
reassessment.
11344?
That's one of them, yes.
And then the other one is 18204?
No, it's 11349.
Okay,
Wait, I thought
she's gonna move 2.
we were moving them from reassessment to general.
We are,
Correct.
2 of them.
Okay, I thought he said then he wanted those to remain in
I'm
general.
sorry, what, Adam?
Those accounts.
Did I miss it?
All 4
Which ones?
for the 2024 budget were in reassessment.
Oh,
The request that I put
Okay.
forward was to move them
Yeah,
all in the
they're in
general
both
fund.
places.
I advertised them in both just to
I gotcha.
assume that I wouldn't have to come back January saying, please fund these 2 employees that have
So
no
it was a
account."
test and we passed, right?
Slowly.
I've always said in life, absolutely everything, including getting out of bed in the morning, is a test. So it wasn't chosen to be a test, but
All right,
Which 2 is, it's
So, Ron,
11349 and.
Do you want to change your motion to approve 1001-0109 as presented with the following changes of reducing account 11344 to 0 and 11349 to 0?
what Amy just said.
do you need it repeated up here?
No?
Fund 1131 as presented, there was no changes.
Yeah.
And Fund 1224 as presented
With taking the 2 to 0.
with the following changes, reducing account 11381 to 0 and account 18204 to 0.
Yeah.
That's your motion?
Yes, that's my motion.
I think it was the double advertisement that what was throwing us.
totally understand.
4 stays.
Second by Amy.
So we have a motion on the floor. Basically, there's no changes other than where it was advertised in both funds. We're going to take 2 to the general and leave 2 in the reassessment as noted in the motion. Have to have a second.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Deere, a second by Mr. Mallers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good morning.
And next up is our auditor,
Been waiting all morning for this.
and it looks like you have three, Miss Elizabeth.
Good morning, Elizabeth Alvey, Johnson County Auditor. No changes from the workshop.
Well, did you resubmit a new budget?
No,
Well, you have one on there at 7%, so
I
you're
do.
still asking for that?
yes.
Okay.
Is there a specific reason for the 7%?
This person is our lead on our counter. She is the person that everybody comes to when they have questions, concerns, maybe issues with the taxpayer.
I also see, oh, okay.
And based on the workshops,
Yeah.
same as with Teresa, I cannot, this year, I, for one, will not support that. I'm staying
Understand.
within the guidelines. And I know this position you're talking about is worth way more than what you're asking, but staying within the guidelines, just like Teresa's, you know, if it were value alone, we'd give them to all of them.
I agree, I understand.
But I'm only one. Any other questions?
Move to approve 1157-102, the auditor, subject to changing the increase from 7% to 5% for line item 11392. And then approving 1216, auditors ineligible, and 1217-102, elected officials training.
1181.
Oh, and 1181, the plat map.
We got a sidebar going on.
We do.
Okay. We would like
Part-time.
to increase the part-time for plat map.
No, sorry.
I am so sorry I can't hear you.
For the, are you looking at the auditor's plat map maintenance fund?
No.
No, what do we got going on?
We're talking about the. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that 7%, we took it out of the part-time, so we'd like to move that back to the part-time, which is 19,900.
That doesn't change your totals.
Yes.
It doesn't change your totals,
No,
correct?
it doesn't change the totals. We
But
just
taking
need
her
to
back
move
to
it
5, that was your
Yes.
original, okay.
Thank you, Amy.
All right,
So what happened again?
We took the 7%, we took that out of the overtime,
Okay,
so we just like to move that back into that. It's not gonna change our totals.
so it's it would go, the 2% would go back into part-time?
Correct.
Right.
so what's that new number, Amy?
I'm sorry, it came out of overtime, like she said. I said part-time, it's overtime.
Overtime.
That makes more
So
sense.
let's put the overtime back at 5,000.
What fund are we in? The-
We're in 11,900.
So you're just moving instead, you're not ready, okay, at this point, you're just saying we'll go with the 5%, but we'll do the difference, the 2%, and push that over to the overtime budget.
Yes, because we took that amount out of. the
They
overtime.
normally ask for 5,000 in there, have consistently for 3 years, and they dropped that to 4133, trying to keep their bottom line and get the 7%, because they have not, they've consistently not left a little bit in there. So that was the reasoning,
Yes,
correct?
yes, correct.
So now the ask is, since we're taking it back to 5%, can move that small amount and go back to the original 5,000 in 1157-19900 overtime item.
So then Amy, what's the new number for 11,392?
48,697.
48,697?
Correct.
Is
That
the
becomes
overtime
5%.
now at 5,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the bottom line's still the same.
It's not a complete 1,000, but
And so Elizabeth, are you typically spending the overtime? Doesn't look like you are. You've
No.
got- Unless I'm looking at that wrong. You got a balance of $4,200 left as of June. So you're not typically using that overtime, or you are?
We are,
You are?
yes, we are.
Should I give this another go?
yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
All right, let's try this again. Move to approve 1157-102, the auditor, with the changes of line item 11,392, the 7% going down to 5% for a new total of 48,697, and 1990 overtime going up to a total of $5,000 in the 2025 requested column.
That is correct.
All right,
And then the bottom line is,
bottom line is unchanged.
Is unchanged.
Correct.
and it's still a 6%.
Right, is unchanged.
And then also 1216, auditors ineligible, 1217-102, the elected officials training, and 1181, auditors plat map as submitted.
I have a first by Mr. Mallers,
Second.
second by Mr. Deere. All in favor? Aye. All
Thank you.
opposed?
Aye.
Votes 5-1, passes. Where'd she go?
And could I make a comment?
Let me make sure she got the vote, please. It's 5-1. Mr. Myers voting no.
Who seconded?
Mr. Deere? Absolutely.
So we approve this one as a 6%, not 5%.
No.
No.
No, 5% for the employee.
For the salaries.
For the salaries, 5%.
But for the budget, 6%.
The overall budget
Stay the same.
stayed the same as we discussed at the workshops.
But this was the only budget that went up to 6%, correct?
No.
Also includes
No.
professional services for the gap.
It was professional services for debt that took it over, having to be increased, not in the employee
There were
line
other
item.
budgets over 5%, they're 2s, 3s, and 4s.
You know, just the 2s, 3s, and 4s
But
employees.
overall,
Yeah.
the overall budget,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all within.
it's all within the guideline.
Salary is within the guidelines. The guidelines
All
weren't,
right.
the guidelines weren't, as we, make sure we
Thinking
clarify.
as a taxpayer, I'm confused.
Okay, well, I'm
I'd
sure
like to
that-
make a comment that what,
It did magic numbers.
there's certain expenses that they can't avoid. And theirs was the gap in actuary services. I mean, it just went up significantly and there's nothing much that can be done about it.
like cost of doing business,
Yeah.
like the postage and equipment, they have no control over some services.
yeah, the guidelines weren't 5% for the total budget. The guidelines were 5% for the salaries.
Any other discussion? Moving on to unified courts. Sheena.
Good morning.
Sheena
Tina
was-
Johnson, Court Administrator.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
You had one of the bigger projects this year.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just bragging back there because last year when I printed off my budget, it was like 20 pages and I'm down to 2. So I'm feeling pretty awesome about that. Okay.
Thank you for your work. We've all looked at it, and it has really simplified the court's budgets a lot. So I hope moving forward, it continues to be that way.
Me too. The only thing I want to bring to your attention is I think I need to reduce, be on page 26. It's line 11169. I accidentally put in 6% for that, and I need it to be 5. So I'd like to reduce it to 56659.
What-
So
what-
on page 26, account 11169, reduced to 56659. Everything else-
5, 6.
56659. And everything else is as we discussed at the workshop.
So you've made, there's no, absolutely no other changes. I know that the court reporters, there was discussion over the matrix and the judges having the parameters and dropping one and bringing them to equal. So moving forward to basically keep the pay scale even for the same jobs completed within the courts.
Yep.
Just a quick overview. None of that has changed,
None of that has
correct?
changed.
And that was part of the overhaul of going to the unified,
Correct.
correct?
Yep.
Because there
Yep.
was a variance between the courts.
There wasn't between court staff, but there were between the levels. We wanted to make sure that the levels, we got rewarded for the mid-level, basically, so we raised that mid-level a little bit. Okay?
But it was part of the overhaul on
Yeah, part of the
combining,
overhaul, right.
combining these six budgets,
sure.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
It was seven. 7 budgets.
7, I'm
Who's
sorry.
counting, right?
Worth it for that, yeah.
Okay, so Sheena is all the way down to,
I've got all the 2501s. I can also talk about the ADR fund. I can talk about
okay, let's,
CASA. I can talk about
let's,
VASIA.
let's do the 20, let's, okay, the 7 that you combined is all the way down through the 2501, 145, right?
So I combined the 7 into just the general fund, the 1001, 0131, and then the other ones are fee funds that I've kept separate for now for records keeping purposes, and we'll see how it goes, and we'll see what I ask for next year. If I can combine those, I will too, but right now, we want to make sure that we can tell who's bringing in what, so.
Okay, so let's handle those separately, and then we'll move on to talk about the ADRs, if that's okay with everybody up here. Any additional discussion for Sheena? And again, we all thank you so much for the work that you put into this.
Of course, thank you.
It's much needed.
Yeah.
So are we doing 139 and 131 only at this time, or are we going down to?
We're doing 1001, 139, and then all the 1200, 131, 133, 134, 2501s from 131 all the way down to 145. None of that has changed since we did our workshops. And there were only a couple of things due to the combining of all of the budgets that appear to be a little higher. It's the 7 instead of the 5 on the court reporters, so we discussed that. So everything, and she changed line item 1001, 11169, which she had as 6%, took that down to 5%, which is 56,659.
Correct.
So
Motion to approve 1001, 139, 1200, 0131, 1200, 133, 1200, 134, 2501, 10131, 2501, 0132, 2501, 0133, 2501, 0134, 2501, 0136, 2501, 0145, and do the judges realize what a good girl you are?
John, can you put in your motion, the 1169 being changed to 5%?
1169.
1001, 11169 has been reduced to a 5% increase instead of 6,
Correct.
169.
making that total 56,659.
I'm sorry, 11169.
Mm-hmm.
Total became what?
56,659.
And adding that. 1001-11169, change from 57,199 to 56,659.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Rhonda.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Myers, a second by Mr. Deere. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Passes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Would you like to speak, how far down are you going? Are you doing VOS? Are you doing ADR?
Yep, I can do ADR. I don't know a whole lot about this budget. It's pretty small.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like he's asking for much outside the norm. What questions do you have?
It looks pretty cut and dry to me. Anyone else have any questions? Dustin, is he still?
Yes. Yep, he had a mediation today.
Did he? Okay.
I'd move to approve 2201 alternative dispute resolution as presented.
I have a first on the floor by Mr. Dittmers,
Second.
second by Mr. Mallers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank you. And then the 4917, the CASA user fee fund, I don't think you have significant changes in that
I
either.
can't hear, I'm sorry, Sheena.
Sorry, the CASA user fee fund, 4917.
Uh-huh.
I don't think we have any significant changes in that either.
And it's all within the guidelines, correct?
Yeah, there's no salaries in there, yeah.
Okay. And that takes us 4917 and 1213?
Yeah, the 1213 is actually the state grant, which is a little lower this year. It's based on CHIN's filings, and for some reason they were down last year. We don't anticipate that to be a problem going forward, but for this grant cycle, we're not anticipating as much funds. So.
Okay. And the 4203?
The 4203, I don't have in front of me. I talked to Lauren right before I left. She said it's par for the course. It's used to pay advocates and some communications expenses.
Gotcha.
Yep. And I don't think you appropriated it at budget time last year. I think that's why you have some
Right,
zeros set
that's why
forth
the
in there.
percentages show
Yeah, that's why
under-
it looks weird.
Yeah, she had to come back to.
She
You're
came in the middle of
correct.
the year and did it, I think.
And she's doing what we asked her to do. We asked her, you know, it would be better budgeting these things going forward. That way she doesn't have to come back and ask for them every
Right.
time. Any questions in regards to CASA, CASA Gall, or the Vazia guardianship fees?
I'd move to approve 4917 CASA user fee, 1213 CASA Guardian, Elitum, and 4203 Vasia guardianship fees.
We have a motion.
As presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Dittmers.
Second.
Somebody.
Second by Mr. Mallers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you for all your hard work.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Angela Morris, Director of Court Services and Chief Probation Officer. You guys are going fast.
We are, we love that.
I
We love
was
that.
just thinking, I think that the workshops may have paid off.
Oh, I do
Because a
too.
lot of what we did at the workshops, we would be doing here today, so.
Well done.
Wow.
Okay, we can start with 1001138. We submitted revised budgets. Amy, do they have those?
Yes.
Okay. So we did reduce, at the workshop, we talked about having some of the salaries at a higher rate due to the work we did last year with the sheriff's office and our criminal justice departments. We have backed those down to the 5%, so those have been adjusted accordingly in what you guys have and what we submitted.
Okay, so everything is within the guidelines as we talked about at the workshops with the adjustment of the officers that, to keep them in comparison across the board with the other departments, those were backed down to 5%.
Correct.
Some of these that do reflect a little bit higher is because of the state mandated requirements, correct?
Correct. The 1001138 is all probation officer salaries.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the increase in the specialization pay? It went from, I think it went from 6 to 12,000.
What line
Yes.
item is it?
17,200, end of the second page.
It did. We had additional employees that are in the specialization categories. So that got approved last year, and then we have additional employees that match what qualifies as specialization pay.
Can you tell me what a specialization employee, I know I'm thinking of SWAT.
Yes, we
Some-
merited off that, so like our TBRI practitioners, our problem-solving court, probation officers, they're on call 24/7, our field training officers.
So was it just 6,000 by mistake the first go-around? Because I'm assuming all those people were there
Yes,
then.
yes,
Okay.
correct, but it was, we needed
Oversight.
to have added it during the workshop.
Okay, okay.
So as they earn these certifications or qualifications and they move into this program is when they qualify for this, which is what was pre-approved, correct? Okay.
And then if that person leaves, then that specialization pay leaves.
Gotcha.
And again, we're wanting to keep it separate so that it's not part of their salaries. They
Right.
get cost of living.
Right. So the 5% only goes to their base.
Correct.
Just real quick clarification. On the original, 24 was 0, 25 requested was 6, and that should have been 12?
Yes.
And there was 0 and 24.
It was 0 and 24 at budget time. We came in mid-year.
Yeah, they didn't.
and
There's a 6, I see it now.
Got this, yeah.
And hopefully that you won't have to do that now.
No, correct.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then my only other question was, and you may have said this, if you did, I'm sorry, the quality assurance was 6445, and you're moving it to Fund 159, or I'm sorry, Department 159, County General. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, yes. There's a new fund. I don't see it on this sheet.
So they were saying that in Fund 1122, which is their fee fund, their cash, they're running out of money, so they had to move 2 positions to the general fund. So that's actually community corrections adults. So I created a new department within the general fund, because like she says, the 138 is probation officers. So the 101,
12644.
the new, I can't think of the department number.
Oh,
There's a new department in the general fund for those 2 positions. So I asked, are there any positions that's currently in the 0138 department that really should be in the community corrections? And that was one of them.
okay.
So it's still in the general fund, it's just a different department.
159.
So I have a quick question on this is moved from a grant fund to the general fund. The quality assurance 12644 was what John just mentioned, right? Is that an example of did the grant go away? Why is?
Stop paying it.
Well, if we're funding from a grant, and now we're moving it to the general fund,
I don't know why it says moved from grant fund. That quality assurance position Was it in the DOC grant?
Numbers.
12,644, 12,644.
I think it started out in the DOC grant.
The only grants we have through community corrections and probation is the DOC grant that salaries come out of. So if it's that, I think it's an error that it says the asterisks and moved from
You
grant
think that was
fund.
coming out of the general fund last year?
No, I think it was coming out of the project income fund.
And they ran out, you don't have enough cash in there for
We will
project
not.
income
We will
to
not
cover
for the
that.
rest of,
So I
for next
agree,
year.
I agree with you. I think that those notes are either a carryover that we didn't get
Yes.
taken out, or they're in error.
or it's a Scrivener's error. That position's,
So it was being paid out of a fee fund, right?
correct.
You were
Project
bringing in the money and paying this amount.
And that is we're gonna go through that one soon. That's the 1122 fund.
But you don't anticipate there'll be enough money to cover that $60,000? Okay.
That's there's several salaries moved over into that.
If that should change in the future, would you, in the same process, move it back?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're doing fees court now and collecting more money.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that, the projection won't be that we'll be able to sustain that cash fund.
Okay. All right. Good question, John. Didn't catch that.
The asterisks, I believe, should say moved from DOC grant fund is what I believe it should say. And you guys don't see those until, was it January? I don't think those don't get approved at budget time. So I think it should say DOC grant fund.
So it's still a grant, not fee generated then, right?
Correct.
So did the grant go away?
No.
If the grant went away, we would all do everything. would
Yeah,
go
it's
away.
a $700 and some thousand grant. We
But
just, we
it
don't,
just doesn't cover.
it doesn't cover it,
I
correct?
gotcha.
We ask for more each year. That's a whole nother,
And it wasn't cut, the grant wasn't cut, it was just
Correct.
expenses outran what they were funding.
correct. We still get it, and it pays for quite a bit. And we have all salaries coming out of that fund also.
Thanks.
Good questions. Anything down here? Anybody have any questions for us on the unified probation? You guys want to take these one at a time? Hello? They're so big, I think maybe we should. Let's
Yeah.
at least do the unified probation first. So I'm prepared to take a motion on the 1001, 138.
Make a motion to approve as submitted.
I will second that.
Well, there were changes though, right?
Yeah,
Oh.
there's some changes in it, that's why.
Yeah.
That's the one.
That's right.
They
Yeah, they
revised
submitted a
it,
revised one.
Okay.
so, as submitted per the revised one, yeah, okay. Okay, who made that motion?
I did.
That was
Ron
Ron,
Deere made a
Melinda-
motion to approve
Melinda.
as presented,
and I did
and
second.
Melinda seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Just to clarify, the quality assurance is currently in the 9142 adult grant.
Okay, so that's the DOC grant.
Which is what we just,
Correct.
yes, okay. You good to go, Amy? All right, moving on to drug and alcohol.
There are no changes in that one from the workshop.
And that's basically cost of doing business, part-time FICA, social security and that stuff, so there's really. Okay,
Move to approve 2502 probation, alcohol and drug as presented.
Mr. Dittmer's made a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second that.
Ms. Grissomer seconded the motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Okay, supplement adult probation services.
There are no changes in that fund either, from the budget workshop.
I was thinking about a question, but I'm not going to. Does anybody else have any? I'm gonna ask you to reiterate for the public. On these supplement line items, would you explain once again the purpose of separating those out? Why you did it?
Yeah.
Why you're showing them as a separate line item based on the wage increases?
Yes,
Would you do that,
over the
please?
last couple of 2 years, we have pulled these administrative stipends out that are state mandated for probation officers. We've pulled those out into separate line items so that those stipends are not included in the cost of living that gets added each year.
So when they get their base raise or the raise that the county approves, it's only going toward their base salary and not toward the supplement line
Correct.
item, which is state mandated?
Correct. And then if that person leaves or changes positions or titles, the title and the supplemental stay and can go to the appropriate new person. And it's also some less clerical work also.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions on, the supplements for the adult probation services? Prepared for a motion? 2101?
I make a move to approve Fund 2101 probation adult supplement as presented.
A motion by Ms. Grissomer to approve as presented.
Second.
A second by Mr. Dittmers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Okay, the next fund is the 1122, that's the adult project income. This is the one we were talking about that the cash flow will not sustain the projected budget. So you're gonna see 1, 2, 3, 4 that are zeroed out and moved to a general fund. That general fund is 1001159.
And this is what we talked about just a minute ago,
Correct.
correct? Why we moved them over. Is there any other changes since the workshops that you've made to this budget? Or any changes?
No, other than the 4 going out into a general fund and HERF and FICA reducing.
Right, so, which is what we just discussed a minute ago,
Correct.
correct?
Okay, so I was just kind of looking here, I do see equipment lease. In Fund 1122, account 35,000. Went up $25,000.
What fund?
So on page 44, 1122, 3,500, or 35,000 for
Yeah.
equipment leased. And you've indicated in your notes it's an increase due to a population increase. I think she wants you to explain that.
Could you just elaborate on that?
We're almost full in the work release center, which is great. Judges are putting more people on the home detention monitoring or an alcohol monitoring, and that's what we pay some of that out of.
Okay.
We pay the company, offenders reimburse or pay us. They're supposed to. In theory, they pay it back.
So that includes like the ankle monitoring and?
It is the ankle monitoring.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions on 1122, community corrections, adult project income? Not prepared to take a motion?
Can you also approve 1001-0159 at the same time? Those were those positions moved out to that new department.
Oh, I thought,
So
so
that-
approving it in the other budget, we have to do it in this one as well?
No, that's a new department that's not on the agenda, but it's a separate budget. So I
Okay.
could approve both budgets at the same time.
All right. I hope somebody got that.
And then what page would that be on?
45.
Okay.
Okay. So I believe we're looking for a motion for 1122, community corrections, adult project income, and 1001-159, moving 1001-11009, and 1001-12644. Correct?
There's actually 5 positions, it's on page 45.
Oh, I went from top. I just read the first one and the last one. I guess you want all those in between? Okay, so on page 45, the community, 1001-159, the 5 positions there will need to be included with the motion for 1122 to move those into the general fund from the, it says grant fund, but, yeah.
Okay, I'll take a whack at it. I move to approve 1122, community corrections adult project income, sorry. And then also, oh, that's on, and then also on page 45, 1001-159, community correction adult. And let's see here, we're moving these 5 positions in the general fund
Just put
159.
As revised, submitted revised.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
as, oh,
I would've done it a long time ago, but no matter.
well, she had me thinking, I thought this was a book. All right, as revised.
I always overthink it, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve budget 1122 as well as 100-0159 as revised and presented.
Second.
Second by
I do
Mr.
that.
Dittmers. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's another test, Angela. Passed.
Okay, the next fund is 1123. It's the community corrections Community Transition Program, there are not any changes from the budget workshop.
And all of those are within the guidelines, correct?
Yes, and they are, that fund is fed by the state for us housing DOC offenders that qualify to go into the community transition program. So that also is a fluctuating fund, that the more offenders we have in there, the more money it generates, the more things we can pay out of it. If we don't have the cash flow, then.
But right now, your cash flow
Yes.
flow is good enough to
Right now,
support
it's
it,
good to
correct?
sustain what's in
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
And this is 1123, right?
1123, yes.
Move to approve 1123, community corrections, CTP.
A motion on the floor by Mr. Ditmers to approve as presented.
Second.
Second by Mr. Deere. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Okay, the 1233 fund, it's the LIT, Community Corrections Adult Correctional Rehab Facility. The revisions you have are making those salaries 5%. The original submission at the budget workshop was at, I believe, 7%. We moved those back down to 5% and then moved $40,000 of utilities from that project income fund that, again, won't sustain, doesn't have the cash flow. We moved that into lit as well under utilities. It's the last line item.
So on this 1233, the $40,000 for the utilities, that's been moved to 1122, right?
It was moved from
From
1122,
1122
yeah.
to 1233.
Yes, so another chunk that we took out of project income to put into lit.
And then the like positions throughout the criminal justice system, those were dropped back down to the 5% to match across the board.
Correct.
So basically, once everyone asks their questions, if they have any, you resubmitted with the corrections, or with what we just spoke of.
Yes, we resubmitted with the added utilities and the salaries.
Reductions.
Cost of living to 5% instead of
Okay.
7%.
Prepared for a motion when everyone is ready.
And 1233-0159, is that what we're on, correct? On the revised?
Yep. as submitted.
Move to approve 1233-0159, community corrections adult, as presented in the revision.
Amy, do we need to mention the 159 again? Nope, okay.
That's perfect, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. We have a motion by Mr. Ditmers to approve as the revised budget was submitted.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mallers. All in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Okay. We made it.
Thanks. We're out down here, guys. Will help.
Good morning, Lori Myers, Juvenile Community Corrections Director.
I didn't hear a word of that.
You did? Oh, I say good morning, Lori Myers, Juvenile Community Corrections Director.
Hi, Lori.
All right, for 4950, there are, it's as submitted at the workshop, no changes. You will notice a change in 1001.
Hang on just a minute, Lori, back to 4950,
Uh-huh.
please. There's absolutely no changes, and it's within the guidelines.
For with what we submitted at the workshop.
Right.
No changes.
Okay. And there's no wages in there other than part-time, FICA, Social Security,
Correct.
wearing apparel, that type of stuff?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so moving on to 1001, 213, Community Corrections Juvenile.
Yes, so, in reference to that, we, at the advisement with legal, we did move from the lit previously. Most of those budgets were out of lit, moved to general fund this time. And I would have to have Adam explain that if there's a question about that.
Well, I think we're all aware,
Okay.
we worked with that, and
Okay,
we're all aware that we kind of overspent out of that fund and needed to put some stuff back where it started.
Again, it was
so-
advised to move
Right,
that, so
exactly.
that is, you'll see some changes based on that.
But the numbers haven't changed.
The numbers have not
Okay.
changed. So within the 1001, the only note I have there is that for the field officer positions, we reduced that back to the 5%, and that is 1001-11768. And we did resubmit this, and 11578.
And that total should be 353,245. It's wrong on your page.
For which one, 353 what?
245.
Is that all of yours, Lori?
No, the other change, it's no change from what we presented at the workshop.
Are you in 140? What
No.
fund are you looking at now?
We're still at 1001-0213.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just staying with, as presented at the workshop for the assistant director.
So I see that's at 6%, Lori, refresh my memory, why did we, why is that not within the guidelines?
Right, that was keeping with the step-down model that we had worked through last year, whereas certain positions were stepped down by a certain dollar amount so that the difference didn't continue to
To
grow.
keep them even across the board?
Yes.
Got ya.
Yeah,
So that's on our recommendation?
that was the grid that we presented and approved last
Yeah.
year. Yes.
Okay.
So that and the field officers that we already discussed were the only changes.
And those went back to 5?
Yes.
Sorry, Lori, do that again on the assistant director and the step-down concept.
Yeah, so what we did was we were looking at, for instance, the director amounts. Last year, we made those all equal. They were very different, and so we equalized all of those and then made a decision within the justice systems to step the assistant directors down by 17,500 rather than percentages or whatever. It was just a step down. So
To normalize it?
I'm sorry?
To normalize it?
Yes,
On a-
and
over
across
time.
the
Okay.
board, whether it's adult corrections, juvenile corrections.
Like pay for like position
Yes.
is what you're driving
Detention
toward.
center's the same, on the same grid, so.
And I believe we worked with them across the board last year, John, in trying to do that, to keep people from leaving here to go there, leaving there to come back over here, trying to keep those positions that they did the same thing within different departments.
Right, and
Equivalent.
one of those notable, there was a big discrepancy in directors, and there was an even more notable discretion in assistant directors. And so our grid was that we had the 5% for directors this year, we stayed to that, but then dropped the assistant directors down 17,500 instead of a percentage. And that's what it turns out to be 6.18% this time instead of 5, if we stick with that model.
Thanks.
You done, Lori?
I am.
Okay, so we're looking at 4950, 1001, 213, and 1233, 213. And all the changes that you spoken of have been resubmitted on
Yes.
this budget, correct?
Yes, it has.
Any questions for Lori on any of the three funds or the revisions? Not, someone's prepared to make a motion?
Why is everybody looking at me?
Just trying to get a little action at this end of the table.
Okay. 49, I've moved to approve as submitted, 4950, 1001, 0213, 1233, 0213. That's the end of this one right now?
Yes, that's
Yep,
Okay.
as submitted on
As
the,
submitted,
on the
yeah.
revised budget.
Yes.
Okay, have a first by Mr. Deere.
Second?
Second by Mr. Dittmers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you
ma'am.
all.
Appreciate your hard work. Hi, Christy.
Hi, good morning. Christy Bruther, the Director of Juvenile Detention. We resubmitted a revised budget that took the correctional officers and supervisors back down to the 5%. We still have the 5 positions in there that we're asking for. And then the same on the assistant director that Lori just presented.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The same on the assistant director that Lori just presented.
Yeah.
I did take landfill back down to 2,500. We did renegotiate, thanks to Jason and the commissioners. So we're hoping that maintains, so I took that back down.
So the assistant director is the same position as Lori, keeping him fair, or keeping him across the board?
Yes, ma'am.
Dropping that, okay. And then all the others you took back to 5%?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this has been resubmitted?
It has, yes.
Okay. Now, the new positions, how many were you asking for?
We asked for 4 correctional officers and 1 teacher.
Okay. I'm gonna have to leave it up to these guys to ask questions about that. I know you probably went over it in the workshop, so if you can address that again, basically, so we'll have a better understanding. That's a lot of new employees.
It is, I understand. So that would put 1 additional correctional officer on each of our shifts. We run 4 shifts. days and nights. We run a 6A to 6P, 6P to 6A. If we were able to add the positions and get them filled, right now, we are currently staffed. I know I have 2 that are retiring this year and another one that's looking at leaving once their baby's born. So that's a heavy lift on filling those 3 positions plus the additional 5 that we're asking for. However, if we're able to do that and fill the positions, then we could increase our capacity or increase the numbers of kids that we take in, which would result Johnson County kids as well as out-of-county kids, and then that would increase the revenue. Based on the projected numbers, if we increase the numbers in the capacity, it would be more than the money we're asking for to fill the positions.
So, and I'm not qualified to tell you whether you need them or not. I'm going to assume that you do, based on your ask, but what if the answer was just plain no? What would you do?
We'll continue to do what we're doing now.
Could you do, okay, but let me finish. If it was a no, you would continue to do what you're doing now?
Yes.
Which I'm assuming is working. What if the number was reduced? I mean, is 5 an absolute positive, have to have them immediately, or is this not something that we could kind of build towards? So is it all or nothing?
To increase the capacity in the facility, yes. I need all 5. I can't do like 2 this year and 2 next year.
And how many do you have in your facility? What capacity are you at now?
We are rated at 24. So adding 1 more position to each shift, then we would go up to 36.
And you feel that you have the numbers to do that? I mean, that would...
We receive phone calls daily from other counties. They have to call us before they can just drop off kids. The number of Johnson County kids has increased some this year. However, we never turn down a bed for a Johnson County kid. We would just not take additional out-of-county residents. Southwest shut down this year, and so the increased need for beds has increased over the year. We are running right at that 24 at all times. We did jump up. I know Barb just asked for insurance information. At one point, we even bounced up to 30. We have 48 individual beds, but based on staffing to keep the kids safe and the staff safe, the 24 is our sweet spot right now. And the proposal was if we added the staff, then our new sweet spot would be 36. Tippecanoe County has permission to open a new facility. They're gonna have 26 beds. And that I anticipate will happen in 2 years. So we won't get their numbers. And so, yeah, I mean, I can't predict the future based on the numbers that I provided. I think that was the trajectory we were going in. But if the answer is no, I understand that. It's a big ask. But I felt like you should have the information and be able to look at it.
So Chrissy, didn't you have, if memory serves me right, in the past, haven't you had numerous positions for years that you could not fill?
Yes.
So they were just out there?
Yeah.
And we carried them from year to year. Are all of those positions filled at this point?
Yes. Yes. Again, I think that is thanks to the council and the partnership that we had in raising salaries. I mean, we are paid among other detention centers. We're very competitive. And then we've also improved conditions, I think, in the building. We've focused on some staff wellness and some of those things that, we talk about. It's not only pay that keep staff here in Johnson County. So right now, we've been very fortunate. But I know with the 2 that I'm gonna lose in the 3rd quarter or the 4th quarter, they're gonna be hard to fill. And I don't have any current applications. Like we always keep a position posted to try to keep people in, and we have part-time line items. So a lot of times we'll hire part-time, get them trained, and then knowing that there's a lot of a turnover and that type of thing. I just don't have any coming in right now. So even if you said yes, I don't know in January I could fill them.
All right. Well, I have to tell you, for me personally, I'm torn. 5 employees are a lot of employees to add at one time.
I understand.
But I also know the programs, and I know that you wouldn't be asking if there wasn't a need there, so I really am torn. The council person in me says, let's give it another year, let's wait and see what happens, but.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So I'm gonna ask my fellow council people to kind of weigh in a little bit as well, because I don't want to sway anyone's decision, but that's a big ask this year.
I think I'm in agreement with you there on that, Pam. Kind of torn and conflicted. But I think when we stagger things, it might be more manageable. We can swallow that a little better.
Did you have something, John?
I do. How many officers do you have now?
So, total, there are 40.
40
full-time,
officers?
Correctional officers, I have 6 on a shift. I have 26 correctional officers at this point in time. And then others, I have maintenance staff, I have program staff, and then, yeah.
So it's a roughly 20% increase in that piece of your staffing.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. The other thing, I think I agree with the comments that have been made, and my suggestion would be kind of the storyline behind, here's what I need and here's why, might be helpful, because this is informative but somewhat foreign to me as far as what you do and how you do it and what you need. So from that standpoint, it'd be helpful to have kind of the storyline as far as what I just said, what I need and here's why I think I need. You mentioned trajectory, right? Based on our forecast, here's what we're thinking. Those sorts of things would be helpful as far as I'm concerned. Just a thought.
Anything down here? No? Okay. Do you have anything for us? Any additional information? So, recap on this. You reduce items to be within the guidelines, those positions. The other items, with the exception of the assistant director, which goes along with keeping them equal across the board, as we asked you to do last year. And then you ask for 5 additional employees. That's as this budget is permitted, or presented, correct?
Correct.
Prepared for a motion if anyone wants to step up to the plate.
I'll break the awkward silence.
I was listening for the
Yeah.
crickets.
I'd like to see this revised with a more moderate number of, I'm not saying no increases, but 5 is kind of the lift we're talking about here as far as.
And I believe she said it was all or nothing, so it
Yeah,
would
so if
have to
that's the
just
case, then
be.
it'd be revised without, if it's all or nothing, yeah.
So if a couple of them, let's say we did 2, that doesn't help. What would happen then?
Well, I guess it would give me the ability to interview and attract staff, to try to, have them ready then for 2026.
So you wouldn't hire anybody at that
I mean,
point?
I could, so
there's a minimum staffing ratio. So if I have 36 kids, I need 7 staff members is the sweet spot of what we've looked at. When we first started the facility, we had 8 on days, and the facility was rated at 48. We took it down to 24 and decreased the staffing. The behaviors are even worse than what we saw 9 years ago, 10 years ago. And so, but in transparency, it's gonna be hard to manage 36 kids even with 7 people. And so like if you say, okay, you can hire 2 this year, maybe 3, we do an average of 12 kids in the classroom for the teachers. And so one of the positions I'm asking for is also for a teacher position, because I can't put 20 kids in the classrooms with 2 teachers. And so, yeah, if we pieced it out, like 2 correctional officers and a teacher this year, and then 2 more in 26, we could get them trained. We could look at maybe raising the numbers to maybe 30, but then I have to decide. Generally, we put more staff on days because, that's when the kids are waking hours. At night, the staff ratio can be 16-1. But still, if a kid needs to go to the hospital, we had that situation this weekend. We had a kid had to go to the hospital. I still have to have a minimum number in the building. So the assistant director came in and went to the hospital. So
I hear you saying, like you said before, I believe it's all or nothing in order to make the program work and get the numbers where you anticipate you want them to be.
yeah, to increase the revenue stream, yeah, it's an all or nothing. So
Chrissy, my recommendation, I think, and I won't make a motion, is that we hold off on this for now. So would be my recommendation, and go for all or nothing, as you said, with the numbers moving forward and more information, and maybe in the future on how that can be done.
I understand.
So, but it'd be up to someone up here to make a motion, one or the other.
I think it was important to start the conversations.
I do too, absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
I wasn't expecting a yes necessarily, but without starting the conversations, we don't know where we're at.
I appreciate that.
All right, I move to accept 1001-140 Juvenile Detention Center as amended, except for removing the 5 employees, which is 11,741, I believe, 11,744, 11,746, 11,747, and 13,005.
So they're just positions, right?
New position, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a motion on that.
I'll
covered.
second that motion.
Amy, that covered everything. We have a motion by Mr. Dittmers, a second by Melinda Grissomer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. It was actually Mr. Mallers that made that
I'm
motion.
sorry.
It's easy to get us confused, I get it.
You guys think I'm kidding you. Look, I have your names on this sheet right
We let the
here.
first one go, man. That way.
Okay, all right. I've been corrected. Did you pick that up, Amy? And it is a 5-1. Mr. Myers voting no.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Madam President, I assume that Mr. Reuter is going to be making a presentation. Before he makes his presentation, I request a break.
Absolutely. We will take a 10-minute break and recess and come back in 10 minutes. And looks like our county consultant, Mr. Reuter, is up next.
Well, good
And
morning,
just in
everyone.
time.
I believe you have a hard copy of the fiscal plan and were emailed a late revision, maybe even yet this morning. I apologize for that. I was writing my notes last night and reconciling to the advertisement. Noticed there were 2 departments that I did not have in there that were new departments to the general fund, and that was the crisis intervention team and juvenile detention aid, and I did not have those in there. Although I had $1 million in the budget for council just for advertising purpose. So the model actually looks better than what you'd received last week. So it's a change for the positive. But the fiscal plan that you have before you is a draft. It includes all the department requests as submitted without any modifications, including jail lit, that I'll touch on a little in more depth later. I've put them into the funds that they were originally requested from. The revenue's been updated for the first 6 months, actual collections revised for the second half and reforecast. We have the maximum levy certified. We have the lit allocation certified. And so our revenues are pretty firm with obviously the big asterisks, the exception of the growth appeal. And I'm gonna hit on that a little bit deeper as well. But for advertising purposes, to give the council flexibility to move pieces around from one fund to the other, the general fund actually has $1 million in the council budget that, with no plans to spend it, it's just appropriated there. There's also $2,012,000 that had been advertised into the general fund budget for jail to be moved back if you so choose to do that. For the fiscal plan, I didn't want that in two places, so I kept it in the original budget, and I'll highlight that again later. The food and beverage fund also had $1 million advertised in the budget, but with no plans to spend it. But that is another place you could move expense if you so choose. And then, as I mentioned, the $2,012,000 in the jail budget, which was for hospitalizations and some contracted services, is actually in the jail lit budget. And I'll show you that and what kind of deficit we have there, and then you can decide how much of that you want to move to the general fund, if any. So that was a conversation I know started earlier this summer because we were seeing the revenues were not going to be able to cover all the new expenses moved to the jail lit fund plus the community corrections payment. So I'll show you that in a moment as well. Connor, I'm going to start on page 27 PDF. So if I say a page number, please add 2 to it. Now 27 is that page there, but I'm actually going by the page number in the bottom left corner there. So this is, you've heard me talk about this a number of times. This is what's called the 6-year non-farm personal income factor. And it doesn't matter where you live in the state. It doesn't matter whether you're urban, suburban, or rural. It doesn't matter whether you're a county, city, town, township, library, or even the school operating funds. This is a starting point for calculating how much property tax that you would be able to collect in your maximum levy. And it's really kind of gotten to be a one-shoe-fits-all calculation. But in an effort to limit property taxes, the legislature, as a result of the last 2 years of increases, they put in a conditional statement. They said, calculate the 6-year non-farm personal income factor as you always have, but then apply 80% to it. But if that number comes out more than 4%, it's only going to be 4%. They extended that by a year. They had that in place for the years 24 and 25, but they now have extended that into 26. But I will tell you that this is getting a lot of conversation at the State House and could see, I could see it being revamped in this next long session. And right now, this factor applies to 90% probably of the units in the state. They have to live with the 4%. You're fortunate enough that your assessed valuation growth is growing 2% faster than the state, qualifying you for an appeal. That's kind of a high bar to hit now. And what I mean by that, for 25, you have to be growing almost 11% to qualify for this appeal. But if you're growing 10.5%, you don't qualify. And for those of you who've been around long enough to know the game of sorry, it looks like a game of sorry, because you could be growing 10.5% and not qualify for the appeal, and you're slid back down to 4%. If you're qualifying, if you're getting over that 11% mark, you're hitting a big appeal number. And it doesn't matter if you're not growing. You could be not growing and you're being pulled up to 4%. So again, you could have a unit that's growing over 10%, slide down to 4%, and you can have a community not growing at all, going up to 4%. And it's creating some inequities across the state. And I would anticipate that you're going to start hearing more conversations about a unique identifier to the community. And I don't know that that will be a bad thing for you. Maybe not as much as we're getting in the appeal right now, but it may not be bad because right now we have to appeal to get it. We have to mathematically qualify, and then we have to write a story to say why we absolutely need this appeal. It might be more of just an automatic, but something that is more unique to what's actually happening in Johnson County, not what's happening on a statewide average. So I would anticipate conversation there. Right now, you're qualifying for that appeal. Connor, I'm gonna go back one page to page 24. This is your, step back here. This is your assessed valuation history. We have 2025 certified at 9.6%. I was happy with that. Last year was lower because another measure that the legislators took was to increase the supplemental homestead deduction. So in 23, the supplemental homestead deduction was 35%. In 24, it jumped to 40%. In 25, it went to 37.5%. So we had some natural growth built in from that going from 40 to 37.5. And that is scheduled to happen again in 26. It's supposed to go from 37.5% back down to 35, where it was in 2023. However, that may be that might be part of the conversation too this next session. They may be talking about increasing that to try and provide more property tax relief. I don't know what direction this is all going to go. All I know is there's a lot of conversation happening at the State House around this property tax. Now, if you look at 25 and you slide down to the bottom there, the very last line, you see 1.1177. That means you're growing 11.77%, qualifying you for the appeal. And I anticipate that you're qualified for at least the next 2 years. Now, what happens in 27, that'll be yet to be determined. But over time, if we go to this unique identifier that actually recognizes the growth and kind of an automatic, may not be, as I said, may not be a bad thing for the county. Going to page 26, Connor. So as you're all aware, last year was a bit of a struggle to get our appeal approved. We appealed, and knowing that we had some risk there, and we received initially a partial approval. We went back and pled our case in person, and we did receive a revised order granting that full amount. This year's appeal amount is very similar to last year's. It is still a big number in our budget. I've asked Adam to help me with the narrative this year, that we're going to spend a little more time on our narrative when it goes in. Last year, we had a narrative, but it was consistent with kind of what we did in prior years and it's been getting approved, so why not use it? But last year there was pushback. And so I know we've had a lot of conversations around, what we're facing in terms of highway construction and cost and projects. We'll be able to update our story on that based on some information that Luke's provided us as it relates to those costs. And I think that will help our story as well. So anyway, I say that because when I present your revenues over expenditures, it's with the assumption that we are going to be given this appeal again for at least the next 2 years. Page 44. This is the lit reconciliation. You've heard me talk about this. There we go. Let's go up just a little bit. As you go from left to right, there's the 1%, what's called expenditure rate. This does not include the edit. It does not include the jail lit. This is just the expenditure rate that gets allocated to all the units within the county. But the last known year, and you heard me talk about this, I believe May or June when we were together last, that the last known year is 2022, and we won't know the actual collections for 23 probably until February this year. But what we do know now that we didn't know last spring when I spoke to you, late spring, is the 2025 lit budget number, and that is at 65 million, up 10.3%. And so that's a good indicator, although it's not everything. And what I mean by that, that's simply a budget number that we know we're going to collect that, but we ultimately always reconcile back to the collection number. So if our collection number is higher than what they distributed, then we get these special distributions. And that column labeled special distributions is how we reconcile it. Anything over 15% of the state gets shipped out in a special distribution. And you can see in 24, we had the largest we'd ever seen at 13.4 million, almost 13.5 million. Next year in 25, I believe I'm using conservative assumptions that we should see another 9.1 million in a special distribution for at least the next couple of years. And so hopefully that comes in even higher. But that special distribution is included in your revenues, okay? And I always say that because the word special means it's not consistent, right? It can be up or down depending on what happens with collections. But for at least the next 2 years, I would anticipate over $9 million in special distributions. Back to page 40. Our portion of the lit, it's kind of hard to see here on the far left, of the shares is 29.83% in 2024. And if you would go one page further, in 25, we lost a little ground. We're now at 29.58. What that means is the other units were actually, their levies are increasing faster than ours, which our portion was slightly less. Had we not gotten our appeal, we would have lost a bigger percentage of that. Lit is allocated based on what you're collecting in property tax, less new debt, plus the prior year distribution. So by us getting that appeal, that kept our levy up and kept your percentage up, your percentage of the pie. So the appeal is not important, or not just important because of the property tax aspect, it's also important because it's determining your portion of lit allocation. So those are your big revenue sources. Want to spend a little more time on those. I'll show you what this all means now. Page 1. Let's go fund by fund here. One other asterisk I want to put out there, and is in the miscellaneous revenues. You could zoom in there a little closer there, Connor. Yeah. In miscellaneous revenues, that includes interest. And you can see that our, going from 2021, we didn't have a lot of miscellaneous revenue, but by 2024, 6.6 million. Our interest income is obviously up significantly from that time. Now, going into 2025, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure anyone can tell us what interest rates are going to be in 25, but I do anticipate that they will be less than where we are right now. I mean, we've heard the story, we're going to cut rates, and it's not happened, but I really believe, this next time that's really going to happen. But what I did is estimated only 80% of the interest income that we're going to receive in 24. So I cut that revenue back, assuming that rates will get cut. And I continue to do that into the future, not knowing if rates are going to continue a steady decline. But it's a pretty big number to be aware of, comparing, that's in our budget right now when we're balancing. So that's in my opinion, kind of a soft number. If rates go down back to 2008, 2009 levels, we could see a pretty big drop in revenue. That's something obviously that we don't control. 100%. We do a great job with the investments, but we don't control the rate always. I've highlighted a couple on the expenditure side. I've highlighted a couple numbers, in particular on the capital outlay. And what we've been doing is appropriating $4 million towards highway each year. And we started that in '23. So we only showed $344,000 of expense in '23, but we actually had $4 million appropriated for highway that did not get spent. That appropriation died, but was reappropriated into 2024, and that's why we got a capital budget of $8,827,000. We will not spend that $8 million this year, and we are now appropriating $12 million in 2025's budget for highway. So essentially what we're doing is we're building that $4 million up. We've been building that $4 million up cumulatively. Although I do believe next year that will start to get spent based on the highway plan. That's been a conversation. So, but then going forward, you can see I continue to model in that $4 million going forward, that we'd always make that $4 million commitment to highway going forward, which is something we will likely bond against. We might issue a larger bond and then use that money to actually make the payment. So, that's a lot, but if you'll, Connor, if you could scroll down to the bottom of the page, you're in a really good cash position, but if you go over to that $2,654,000 there, that is the 25 budget. So it looks like our budget's out of balance, right? But that's, I don't call it, that's not a structural deficit. Structural meaning that our future revenues and future expenses are going to be out of line. It's out of balance because we got $12 million in there for roads. So had we not increased that to $12 million, and it had only been $4 million, our budget would be in balance as is. Now, again, that doesn't assume you move anything from jail lit yet, okay? That's pre any movement that you move into this fund. But when you look at 26 out there, you can see that that is not a structural deficit, that our revenues are exceeding our anticipated expenses in that year with the $4 million commitment continuing to go to highway. Although, I was speaking to Mr. West before the meeting, this next legislative session is just going to be an interesting session. There's going to be a lot of conversation about property tax, and my speculation is if they talk about cutting property tax, they may be looking to replace it with some form of a replacement revenue. If I had to guess, it would probably be income tax. They would probably maybe give you some new tools to whatever. If they cut property tax, they might give you a new tool of a new way of collecting local option income tax. Really early in all this, okay? So, but just kind of asterisks, your two largest sources of revenue, property tax and income tax, is going to have a lot of conversation at the State House. And so if you were lobbying on lit, you would want to lobby that your percentage remains around that 29%, right, of the collections going forward. There is actually, this is public knowledge, Senator Baldwin originally included Johnson County in this conversation, is not in this conversation right now. Senator Baldwin has proposed that Hamilton County be a pilot county for how lit is allocated. And the conversation or the language would be that the county auditor submits all of the property addresses in the county to the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue would take that data and cross-match the returns to those addresses. So if you had a large apartment complex, all the returns with that address would get reported, and they would report it by taxing district. And the county may not get, from what I can tell, based on that, the language, you may not get the same percentage of the bucket from each of those. Right now you're getting 29% of the total bucket. No matter where it's collected, you're getting 29%. But under that model, you may not be getting the same percentage. Now that's early language, right? It could get adjusted between now and then. But that is something to watch. One, if that pilot goes through. But I could even see into the future now that we might start reporting income tax much like we do excise tax. And what I mean by that is when you go to buy your license plate, when you go to the BMV, you tell them what taxing district you live in. And then they take that money from your license plate and they put it in that taxing district. And then that money collected in that taxing district is distributed based on the rate, all the rates in there. So that then becomes that more of the money's going back to the community from where it's collected from. Of course, the county is everyone, right? So it gets a little clunky, but there are some real inequities happening across the state now because of the 6-year non-farm personal income factor. You know, you have these units that are growing, getting real close to the appeal, and they can't get there. And so they're not just losing the property tax, they're losing a bigger percent of the income tax they are paying in. So there's going to be an interesting session, to say the least. But we can't base that model on any of that. But obviously, next spring, we'll be updating this and seeing where things are. But obviously, if something big's happening, your association does a great job. David Bonhoff does a great job representing the counties, and he's all over this. And I'm sure he will represent you well. So that's a lot, but bottom line is you are in a very strong cash position. At the end of 25, even though we plan to spend some of that cash, we would still have about $43 million in cash balance. Sounds like a big number, but if you see the highway project list, that doesn't go as far as you might think. The next page, page 2, and Amy shared with me, you're on this, that you are starting to move positions out of the reassessment budget. But as you can see, as it was submitted, we are out of balance in this fund. We're still strong in cash here, and you can approve all those positions in there now. But you can see now for the last 3 years, 21, 22, 23, and 24 budget, that we are spending into that cash. Not overly alarming, but it sounds like you're already starting to move a few positions a year from that budget into the general fund, because obviously eventually we would go through all the cash. Page 5, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but this is the animal shelter fund. And think of this as a department in your general fund. It has its own budget rate and levy in a separate fund, but it shares the maximum levy. If you put more into animal control, there's less in the general fund. If you put less in animal control, there's more. It pushes because it's using the same revenue source. Same with the health fund. Those two funds act like they're departments within your general fund. So basically, all I do is put enough property tax in this fund to cash flow the budget, and it's about in the right spot on cash balance at the end of 25. $744,000. The next year's property tax collections being $1.4 million, or an estimate. So you're at 50%. So we should not have any cash flow issues in that fund. The next page, I won't spend any time on this. We've talked about this before. This is the rainy day fund. We did have $3 million appropriated for highway that didn't get spent in 23. It got carried forward into 24. We would end the year, if all that encumbrance gets spent, we would still have about $3.5 million in rainy day. Now, you can, in 24, transfer up to 15% of your cash balance from the general fund, or your total budget, I should say. Your total budget, you can transfer up to 15% through 24. If you wanted to replenish this money and take some of the cash out of the general fund and move it to the rainy day fund. And then I believe it reverts back to 10% starting in 25, that you can transfer up to 10% of the total budget. But that might be something you want to consider because we're in a strong cash position in the general fund. So.
When does that decision have to be made, Louis?
Actually now, rainy day transfers can happen anytime during the year. I would say most either do it right at the end of the year when they kind of know where their budget. This is not based on what your budget's not spent, it's just 10% of your budget. But a lot of the units I've seen wait till the end of the year to see like, well, how much budget did we have left over that we might want to.
And that's, I believe that's what we've done in the past.
Yeah, yeah. Now, keep in mind, we know we're gonna have 4 million or 8 million unspent from the highway, but that's reserved
Right.
going forward.
But with our cash balance, we should still be able to do the
Yeah, I would
50%
think.
comfortably.
Yeah. You can do up to, you're right,
Right.
you don't have to do it all either, just what your comfort level is there. And then some wait till after January, till the books are closed and see the real cash balance too.
Gotcha.
So it just depends on when you'd like to evaluate that. Page 9, I won't spend any time on this. Basically, the highway department's put a budget together that balances to its revenue. And so you could approve that local road and street budget as requested. Page 11 is the health fund. I will tell you, we're in a really strong cash position here. I've run enough property tax into it to balance it next year, but that leaves about $1.4 million there. If we had about $650,000 cash in this fund, it would be cash flowing. So the health fund has a very strong cash balance in comparison to its budget. So you could, and we've done this before, you could draw the levy down in the health fund and move that to the general fund. And then the next year, though, you got to bring the health fund back. You couldn't do that for long, but you could temporarily lower the health fund levy and move cash if you so choose. Page 13, this is the cumulative capital development fund. The budget that's been submitted is in balance with the anticipated revenues by $836,000. Leaves you a strong cash balance in the cumulative capital development fund of $6 million. So, if you have a big project or something that comes up, you've got some cash here that you can access. Page 15, we're in the process of replacing this bond. We haven't done it yet, but I've assumed in this model that we will maintain the same tax rate in 25 as we have in 24. And how we accomplish that is by issuing the one-year GOs. We plan to issue $7 million this year. Part of that payment will be put in 25 and the balance of it will be put in 26. But I've made the assumption that you'll continue to maintain a flat tax rate. Okay, page 18. This is the jail lit fund. And this is the one that caught my eye earlier this summer. And one more page, I'm sorry. Yeah, here we go. We were modeling what the right payment was for this, and originally, based on what the budget was approved for 24, we could have had a higher payment for community corrections. But when the budget was submitted this year for 25, I built that in and then recognized on an ongoing basis there wasn't going to be enough money to move that much expense to the jail lit fund. And you can see that, going back to 23, our personnel cost in this fund was 6.6 million, 6,652,000, and the budget for 25 is 8,638,000. And we also had higher cost moved into this fund, I believe, for the hospitalization and contractual services. And so right now, you can see that in 25, I've highlighted the debt payment because the jail bond rolls off in 25, but then we've tailored in the community corrections. And so that $3 million, almost $4 million payment reflects that. And then it goes back down to 2.3 million thereafter. But you can see this year's budget is out of balance by approximately $1.6 million. that includes, that assumes not moving anything. But if you do decide to move anything back to the general fund, that puts more stress on the general fund, but balances this fund. So you could approve it as is if you wanted to leave it here another year, what we have to evaluate is how far into the future can we do that? Because right now I see a structural deficit out there in 27. So does that make sense to everybody? We've got it advertised in the budget for your flexibility. It's in the general fund and it's in the jail lit fund. In my model, I only have it in the jail lit fund because that's where it's originally submitted. And there's a deficit there of $1.6 million, so.
So if we've got a structural deficit in 27, what kind of action do we need to take and when do we need to take it?
Well, I guess I'd compare it to what you're doing in reassessment. Do you want to move some of the expense back in 25 back to the general fund and then not do it all in a given year? You know what I mean? If you follow me on that.
Yeah.
Do you want to start moving some back now, or do you want to wait till you're out of cash and then have to move more? It might make sense to start moving some now, because you know you're gonna, in the general fund, probably gonna need it in the future right now. That makes sense. Now this model also assumes special distributions going into this. So this is the regular distribution plus special lit distributions going into it. The next one, page 19, and we've talked about this too. You know, we have cash, but for the last 3 years now, for 4 years, we will be going through cash. So these positions are going to have to get moved somewhere as well. We won't be able to continue with what the revenue that we're getting from the state with what we're paying out in personnel. So this is similar to reassessment. We can budget it all in 25 and cover it, but we do have a structural deficit in this fund, meaning we're not going to catch up. The next page, page 20, this is the edit fund, much like we did the general fund. We budgeted $4,023,000 for highway. We didn't spend it. We budgeted $8,847,000. 24, we're not going to spend it. But then in 25, we're budgeting $15 million, but I believe we're really going to spend it. So I mean, if the highway program moves forward, that money would actually get spent. And then going forward, I assume that we would appropriate what we collect in this edit fund for highway. Page 21. This is the food and beverage. This has an extra for advertising. You can budget to this fund. Right now, it's cash flowing. It has about a $300,000 surplus in there. You know, you could move some of those E911 positions to this fund if you wanted to. You know, if you wanted to start to correct that budget, you could move some of those positions into this fund and then balance it. But the auditor's office has put $1 million in there for your flexibility, but this fund has done really well. And as you can see, we still have $3 million available in cash at the end of 25. Page 22, I'm just about done here. Page 22, I've highlighted this number. This is the edit fund. This is the edit fund, food and beverage, and general fund. And obviously, this is out of balance because we have $15 million appropriated in edit and we have $12 million appropriated in general fund. So $27 million is being appropriated that we really plan to spend, and our cash would drop by $11 million overall in those three funds. But that was planned. That's not something, what I call a strategic spend down. You were planning to do that. This is not a surprise. The last page is the tax rate. page 23, not much to say here other than, I've modeled this, that our tax rate would remain flat in 2025. In summary, everything looks good. Obviously, if I have two caution flags, it's interest, not knowing what's going to happen with interest rates in the future. Our budgets, obviously we're using that to fund things. And the second being the legislative session and the appeal. The appeal obviously would leave our general fund out of balance if we didn't get the appeal.
When does that?
So, last year we got in a bit of a pinch in that, it got really late into December and we had already issued our bonds. And so we didn't get a response to the appeal until after we issued the bonds, and then we had to reappeal. So it was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was.
I can check my emails. I feel like we got it early January was the final.
Yeah, I think, did we go down between Christmas and New Year's for our meeting? Or was that in January?
It was in person.
I'm trying to remember.
Just a ballpark.
Yeah, I hope they start responding to the appeal sooner than they did last year, but in the last few years, it's been December before we know.
Well, you're thinking in the past. It's always been right on the money.
Okay.
So I'm
Yeah.
pretty confident with what you're saying, and I know that you always go low.
Yeah, I try to be conservative in my approach.
So I'm confident.
That the tax rate would stay the same, and you're showing it the same for 2023. We've experienced a lot of growth in our AB. That should affect the rate downward, shouldn't it?
Well, there hasn't been a lot of incentive to decrease the tax rate. And so you would think that, but remember, our general fund levy is growing 11%. So that's eating up a lot of that growth. So in a perfect world, your general fund levy would grow consistent with your assessed valuation. In 23, our assessed valuation grew more than we collected. It dropped a little bit that year, but we captured it in the bond, and we captured it in the one-year bond. And so, and in 24, we collected the appeal, which gave us that bigger bump on our general fund levy. Our general fund levy didn't go down, it actually went up in 24. Because the assessed valuation only went up 5%, but we collected 11% in levy. So we've been managing the tax rate with the appeal dollars and the short-term debt.
Can I highlight something real quick, or at least ask a question? Mike, on the jail lit discussion, I know the sheriff has put the hospital medical expenses and contractual services in two locations. One is a jail lit and one is general fund. That's about $2,012,000. If council moves all that to the general fund, that gets you where we want to be on the jail bond calculations.
Yeah, that would be more than sufficient. So that was early, Adam, in the summer, we didn't have the certified lit number. And so it was about $2 million, and those were the two numbers that were close to 2 million. It's been advertised in both places. They could fund it in the jail lit fund, but they'll be going through cash to do it. And it might make sense to move it back to the general fund to use some of the general fund cash to cash flow it. Now, that would increase our deficit in the general fund right now, but our deficit in the general fund is because of the $12 million we have appropriated for highway. It's a bit of a Rubik's Cube this year with the different moving parts, but overall the budget looks great.
you guys have any questions on the jail lit for Thursday for the sheriff?
It's pretty much what we discussed before, and then just putting it backwards. We'll start it.
I just thought, well, Mike is here.
That's all I have for you this morning. I will, obviously, after you get through your reviews and modifications, Amy will send me all of that information, and I will put it back into the fiscal plan so you can then see what is being considered for the adoption.
Thank you.
Do you have any additional questions? I'm sure we can email you if you come up with something.
Amy's got my cell phone, I'm just a phone call away. All right.
Mike, we appreciate what you do for us.
Thanks for coming out.
I think we're through today's agenda, are we not? All right. We're going to recess here shortly unless there's someone or anything that someone wants to come to the podium. Anyone have anything they want to add, suggest? All right. So I'm open for a motion to recess until Thursday morning at 8:30 a.m.
Motion to recess till Thursday morning at 8:30 a.m.
Sure, second.
We got a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
We have enjoyed the food from
Yeah, it's been
Hamilton in
great.
the past.